Hey guys, FunnyGuyTimmy here to answer a question that was left on one of my other videos that at first I didn't really understand what was being asked, but I think I understand it now. So I'm going to do a whole video on it because it is something that I haven't really addressed, and I can kind of understand how some people might need some more information or might get confused. So one of my other videos, I was talking about converting a non-walk-in closet like one of these into a recording space where it's one of those sliding door closets where it doesn't really have enough space to really get in there. And I was talking about using one of these kinds of curtains like so to drape in front of the closet instead of using the sliding doors. And then I also said something probably about moving blankets or sound blankets. But then I also said, I think that you could use regular blankets. And so someone left a question like, what kind of blankets? And I didn't really understand the question. I thought it was self-explanatory, but I can understand why there's confusion. There's lots of different kinds of blankets. There's lots of different shapes of blankets. There's quilts, there's comforters, there's just fleece kinds of blankets. So I have 3 in here with me to kind of maybe explain some of the things. There's the small ones that I could find that don't take up that much room, but they're like just sitting at my feet right now. So I'm going to show you 2 that probably aren't really good for sound absorption or eliminating echo or really any kind of sound treatment. I mean, if you're in a hotel and that's all they have to use to put over yourself, I mean, that's all you got. But it's not ideal. So the first one that I have is this kind of fleece kind of blanket. It is very, I'm trying not to let it just drape on the floor because it's where I work. It's kind of dirty in here. So it's very thin. I don't know if you can, how well you can see this, but it's just it's like a felt almost. It's not very thick. I can see light coming through it. It has almost this kind of wool texture, which is fine, but the fact that it's not that thick and I can see light going through it, even when I double it up, like it really doesn't change that much in the sound. Like you can hear that there's not that much of a change in my voice, maybe slightly, but really my voice is going straight through it. So it's not really going to change anything. So these kinds of really thin blankets that are essentially just slightly thicker sheets, not ideal. The next one that I have, this is actually one of my favorite blankets just because I don't like fleece, really. I don't like the feel of like wool or fleece, but this has a little bit more of, I think it's a little bit more of like a cotton or a nylon. It's smoother. It's just softer. But the difference between this one and that one is this one actually is multiple layers. There's a layer on this side, and there's a layer on that side, and there's a very thin amount of padding between the fabric. Now, this is one of my favorite blankets to sleep with when it's cold, but it's not really, again, it's not all that effective with sound. It's slightly better. I can't see that much light coming through it, and it does change the sound a little bit, but not that much. It takes kind of the high end off, but ultimately, my voice is still getting through. You can see there's a little bit of a change, but it's not that much. It's more than the fleece, with just one layer. Like I didn't, like the other one I doubled up, but now I've doubled this one up. Let's see how much of a difference it makes. Okay, so here we go. Okay, now so that muffles it a little bit more, but again, not so much that you're not going to hear noises outside of your recording space. If you have these 2, this is the better kind to have. This is essentially more the kind of blanket that someone would have for like on the couch kind of thing. It's not really like a bed blanket. It's kind of a small one. I don't know where you find it. Now, the last one that I have is actually the blanket I used to use instead of this. It is a thicker kind of, it's more, I guess it'd be more of a comforter. It's big, it's thick. I mean, it's not that long, fortunately. Otherwise, I'd be knocking everything off just trying to open it up. But as you can see, it is much thicker. It's just much, much thicker. And again, it has multiple layers, but essentially it's just 2 thin fabric layers that are essentially the same material as that one, but it has a lot more cushion in it. And there's a lot more air in the middle of it, which gives you more layers, which like this has like 3 or 4 layers and then gaps between them. There's just pockets of air. That's essentially more or less what you want. The more layers and the more air, the more it's going to trap the sound or prevent echoes from getting in or out. So I'm going to do this again. Again, 1 layer. So here we go. And that dropped off a lot. So changed the sound of my voice by a lot. There is a huge difference between how I'm talking. This is very muffled. And this is very clear, very sharp, but this took a lot of the high end off. A lot of the high end off. So you're mostly just getting the lower tones. So again, if I was to double layer it, there's going to be a huge difference. So this is basically me. You can hardly hear me, but this is just regular, no, and then this is with the blanket. There's a huge difference, very noticeable, as the opposite of the other two. The other two, they're very, very thin, so there's lots of sound getting through. But with this kind that is very thick, look how many layers that is now. Look how many pockets of air. Look how much there is between you and the microphone. So if there was traffic outside, or there was echoes, or there was noise, this is the blanket. This is the kind of blanket I would say that you'd either want to put over you or put on the walls or drape in front of your closet. This is more the kind of blanket that you would want because it has so many layers. It has so much air in it, and it's very thick. It's not thick in the fact that it's dense. Dense blankets, like actual sound blankets or big moving blankets, those ones are going to be very dense. They have a very well-packed material, and still they have multiple layers. So it's acting more like an actual piece of drywall rather than fiberglass. So this would be more like fiberglass, a thick, heavy blanket, like a big moving blanket or an actual sound blanket would be much thicker, and that would be more like drywall. That's the best analogy that I can come up with that one. I don't have any actual sound blankets. I have one moving blanket that you guys have seen before in my videos when I'm like on the road or I'm doing hotels. And the reason I use that one is because it does actually have multiple layers, and it does have a pattern that I feel breaks up the echoes a little bit. It prevents from, it's not as flat and smooth. So audio doesn't just keep, there's no standing wave. It doesn't just keep bouncing around all over the place. And then it is thicker than those first two blankets, basically put together. I would prefer to bring my big fluffy blanket because obviously it does work slightly better, but it's harder to pack. It's not as easy to roll up and condense and put in a container, so I have a moving blanket. And the moving blanket that I got is from Home Depot. There are the moving blankets that are more like a felt or a fleece, but then there's those ones that are multiple layers. And then, of course, they do have actual sound blankets, which are sometimes 5 layers. They'll have sometimes like it's not really a fiberglass, but it's more like it's just pieces of material. I don't know what it is. It's like pieces of wool or cotton. It's just all jumbled together and they're just woven together. It's not really woven together, but it's just packed in there. It's very dense. So that's what it is. So when I say blankets, I don't mean really thin blankets. I normally mean large blankets, large comforters, not really quilts. Unless it was like one of those old-fashioned quilts that grandma would make, and it's made up of so many layers. It's like one of those quilts that you would use like in a very cold house, and that's literally all you would need to stay warm. Unless it's one of those, because that's probably really heavy and could very easily just kill all sound. But that's the kind of blankets that I'm talking about when I say blankets, those thicker, bigger ones. So anyway, I hope this answered the question. It's probably the first time I've actually really touched this question, really tackled it in depth as much as I could. Thank you for asking it. I don't remember the person who asked it. Okay, here it is. Is Anthony Anthony Inisi? I hope I'm saying that right. I hope that's not your real name and I just butchered it horribly, but that's who left the question on the video talking about non-walk-in closet. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you worship Satan, give it a thumbs down. If you're new, subscribe, ask any questions down below, and I will see what I can do to answer them. And until next time, peace!